I want to welcome this bill, Minister. I think it's a long time coming. It's about, I think, about 2.5 years ago since it was before the subcommittee on mental health, and I don't know why it's taken that long in terms of coming to this juncture, but I'm sure you have your reasons. And it's 23 years ago since the last comprehensive review of mental health care in Ireland. And when you look at that bill now, it was probably kind of, I suppose, cutting edge to a certain degree 23 years ago, but there's obviously very antiquated practices, treatment practices, and phraseology and terminology that you would never ever use now. So it's good that we're kind of looking back to look forward in terms of how we treat people with mental health difficulties and the treatment that they get, because it's clear that if people with mental health difficulties get the right intervention, the outcomes are extremely good. You know, and that's the good news. But they have to get that treatment, and they have to get that timely treatment. And just in terms of my insight, I want to really thank Mental Health Reform in terms of their kind of to give me an understanding of this legislation, and also over the last number of years given us an understanding of mental health reform, because there needs to be very serious reform in terms of mental health in Ireland, because of the, I suppose, the difficulties of actually trying to get services and so forth. So that's to be greatly welcomed. And as I said, it was 23 years ago since the last bill, and a lot has changed in 23 years in Ireland. I think we're good at talking about mental health, particularly men. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I think it's good to talk, because men generally had bottled that in, didn't talk about their own feelings, and I think it's really good that, you know, we're talking about things, because I think when you talk about something, when you don't bottle it in, it actually kind of makes you feel better, but obviously it is good for your well-being and so forth. I just want to kind of just touch on a number of aspects of the bill, Minister, and I know Deputy Roisin Shortall was talking about the phraseology, the kind of rights-based emphasis to this bill, and it's good that, you know, with the assistant decision-making bill, that was very important in terms of a rights-based rather than a paternalistic approach to healthcare. At least we have that, you know, and I think that's very welcome. Just in terms of involuntary admission, I think this is quite complex, and you know, we should never be in a situation where members of the guards are kind of intervening generally in this situation. You know, it's not their fault, but obviously this was part of, I suppose, a different mindset over 20 years ago, where, you know, the police had made that intervention. And I think that could be very problematic, very problematic. And I think it's good that we're changing that now in terms of family members and healthcare professionals. And I think that's extremely important in terms of where this is going. In terms of the regulation around CAMHS, I think it's extremely important. Probably one of the most important parts of this legislation. Now, I presume this legislation is going to pass in the lifetime of this government, but when that's going to be enacted, that's a different matter altogether, because this could take a while before it's enacted. So I just wonder, could you be open to certain parts of, I don't know if this is possible, certain parts of the bill being enacted, you know, before, before, I suppose if it's legislated, but actually, you know, because we could be waiting years for certain parts, particularly around the CAMHS regulations. I think that's probably very important that regulation takes place in the next, as soon as this legislated for. Just finally, Minister, in around the rights of under 18s and particularly 16 and 17-year-olds, I think it's good that, you know, this age group has a say in how actually, you know, what mental health treatment they get. I think that's very important, because in the past young people are kind of dismissed, and again it's that kind of top-down kind of ideology, you know, that's just not healthy in terms of overall healthcare. In terms of, again, another kind of complex area that probably needs to be spoke about is around restrictive practices and practices around restraint, around kind of seclusion of young people, and how that is, I suppose, dealt with. In the past, people were sometimes over-medicated, sometimes people were violently restrained. That, you know, if we talk about that now, it would be completely alien to how actually mental health services have worked. And mental health services over, you know, have evolved in the last 150 years. You know, there was practices that were done that would just, you couldn't believe that actually they were happening. But it's evolving, you know, and through that evolution and through new legislation, which this is trying to do, it's not perfect by any means, and there is huge gaps in terms of access to mental health care. That is the kind of, I think, the open wound in terms of when people need that health care at this particular time, they can't find it, then that leaves a kind of a huge grievance in society. And I think that's something that as a government, hopefully you can, but through, I think, better funding, more targeted funding. So I think, Minister, overall, I think it's welcomed in terms of this review and in terms of this legislation. It's not perfect by any means, but it definitely goes, I think, some way in trying to address not only mental health care now, but over the next two decades. Thank you.